Hello and welcome to my podcast. I'm recording this from my bedroom, so I've got some nice ambience sounds in the background. So I've got sounds of a babbling brook, in case you're wondering what that sound is. It's from my Google Nest that I got from YouTube as a gift because I have a premium account. And also, I have the music. It's like a meditation music, Adrift, which I purchased from a composer to use in my YouTube videos. And it's Theta waves, which is really nice and relaxing. And it's something to do with your subconscious. I can't remember exactly. I'll have to look that up. So I just wanted to create a really nice sounding atmosphere just to block out any external noises that could affect my podcast. So I haven't recorded a podcast in quite a while. I've been busy, so I wanted to get back into it. It's bank holiday Monday today, so I've just been reading in bed, so just nice and relaxing, reading some theology, ancient texts. I'm currently interested in learning about theology and ancient religion, things like that. I'm not a religious person myself. I would say I'm more spiritual. I just want to. I'm just interested in like how the different religions want to connect with God, and I think that's basically all religions are. That we're all trying to strive to find a connection with God in different ways and methods and stuff like that. So I don't know how this is going to sound because this is the first time I'm recording with all this ambience sounds in the background. So I hope you can hear me. So this morning I woke up and I'm reading some books from the Bible. So I've started reading from the New Testament, and then also someone told me, it's a good idea to read the first 5 books from the Old Testament to get like a foundation so you can understand the New Testament. So I just really love the way the writing. It's just really eloquent. It's just really lovely to read. So I was just reading this morning the book of Genesis, book 1, and it's just really lovely the way it's written. I can probably quote it if I bring it up on my app. 1 second. So because I'm not a religious person, I just so I'm just interested in just reading ancient texts of different religions and things like that, just from a theological perspective. I'm more of a philosophical person, I would say, more of a spiritual person. And so I didn't even realize that you really think of the Bible as a library of books. I wasn't aware of that. So I think don't quote me on it. I'm like really new to all of this. There's 66 books of the main canon. I think that's what they say. So you think of the Bible as sort of a library, and then you just take out a book that you're interested in. So I was just reading Genesis this morning, and I just love the beginning of the first sentence. It's just very beautiful the way it's written. The creation of the world. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. So it's just really beautifully written. I just love it. So, And also my friend yesterday, she recommended a book that she's reading called The Wisdom Codes, Ancient Words to Rewire Our Brains and Heal Our Hearts by the author Gregg Braden. I think that's how you pronounce it. I actually know this author. I actually know him. I don't know him personally, but I know of him. I've been a fan of him for quite some time because I was watching his YouTube seminar, which I will bring up in a second so that you can look it up yourself. So I watch a lot of different things. I have a very holistic approach to, I think, life and philosophy and stuff like that. So I was watching this. He's like a magician occultist, and he recommended actually. So there's like a whole bunch of lessons and playlists about magic and things like that. I don't personally practice magic, but I'm just really interested in, learning the different, keep saying, but learning how, different people practice different things. So he recommended to watch The Language of the Divine Matrix by Gregg Braden. So you can look it up on YouTube. It's a 3-hour seminar and it's really, really interesting. It blends science and prayer and it's like the science behind life. So it's kind of like a science approach to theology almost, but not really. So it doesn't really talk about religion, but it just talks about esoteric information, but has some science background to it, some science foundation to it. So go on YouTube and search The Language of the Divine Matrix. It's 3 hours long with the speaker Gregg Braden. So that's Gregg, Gregg, and then Braden. I don't even know if I'm saying it right. Braden, Braden. The Language of the Divine Matrix. So then my friend said, "Oh, you should really get this book. It's really good." And I was like, "Oh my God, I know of him. I've been a fan of him for ages." So then yesterday I bought his ebook, The Wisdom Codes, Ancient Words to Rewire Our Brains and Heal Our Hearts. So I'm just going to read the introduction to it, just to give you a little bit of background about it. I probably won't even publish this podcast because I'm just like talking all over the place. I don't know. I'll think about it. I guess this could just be like a practice for me just talking, or you just have this on in the background, just like background noise. So you can feel like there's someone talking in the background. So not only did I buy the Wisdom Codes book, but then I ended up buying his other books as well, because while I was on Amazon buying Kindle books, I bought the Divine Matrix book, Bridging Time, Space, Miracles, and Belief. And then I bought the God Code, which is The Secret of Our Past, The Promise of Our Future. And then I bought Secrets of the Lost Mode of Prayer, The Hidden Power of Beauty, Blessing, Wisdom, and Hurt. So in the end, I ended up buying all 4 of these books. So I'm looking forward to reading them. In the past, I used to be like, oh, I'm not going to buy Kindle books. I'd rather have the proper physical book. I'm really old-fashioned like that. I really love actually having real books and reading them and highlighting them. But lately I've been buying a couple of Kindle books as well, because sometimes I want the book right now and I can't wait for delivery. And also it's really nice because then I can just read it and highlight it, and then I can copy out text from it and make notes and stuff like that. So I'm actually, kind of doing both now. I'm doing real physical books and Kindle books, which is something that I never thought I would do, because I was so oh no, I'm never going to buy Kindle books. I want to read physical books. So I'm slowly adapting to new technologies. Okay, so I'm just going to read a couple of sections from the beginning of this book just to give you an idea of what the book is about. So my friend She literally just sent me a picture of a screenshot from the book, and she actually told me ages ago. She was like, "Oh, you have to buy this book; it's really, really good." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And then she mentioned something again yesterday, and it was really nice what she sent me. And I was like, "Oh my God, I have to buy this book." So I'll just read out what she sent me. She sent me a screenshot of the book. So it was Wisdom Code 1 from Psalm, I think I'm saying that right, Psalm 91. So that's from the Bible. So it's Psalm. So Psalm. So I don't think you pronounce this P like psychology, Psalm. So the screenshot that she sent me that had me intrigued to actually buy the book. It was about a wisdom code for protection. And so it's Wisdom Code 1, Psalm 91, Wisdom Code 1. And then he quotes a verse from the Bible, from Psalm 91. And it is, He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in Him will I trust. So then Gregg, Braden says that the use of this wisdom code is for protection. And this code was created by the prophet Moses as he climbed Mount Sinai to shield him from unknown forces during his ascent. It's become a standard for protection that's use ranges from the challenges of everyday life to the safety of entire armies preparing for battle. So I was like, oh, that really like struck me, and I was like, oh my God, that sounds amazing. I wanna get this book. So then I bought the book, and then yesterday I made like a little notebook. So I'm gonna copy down wisdom codes and verses from the Bible that he references. But in the book he talks about ancient words from lots of different religious books. So it's not just from the Bible, it's actually from different religions. If I go to the index, sorry, not index, if I go to the contents, so he takes ancient codes from Buddhists, from I think Hinduism, and other places. So yeah. So I thought that was really interesting. So I bought the book, so I'm going to have a read from it. Because I'm really interested in like ancient beliefs and stuff like that. I just find it really fascinating. Okay, so then for this protection code, he talks about... So then, in reference to the protection code that I just... protection prayer that I just quoted from Psalm 91, I think, verses 1 and 2 from the Bible, King James Version. So then Gregg says that among the 39 books in the Old Testament of the Protestant Christian Bible, the book of Psalms is unique. The general theme of the 18 books that come before Psalms and of the 20 that come after it is that they contain information, instructions, and commands directed from God to the people of earth. But then he says this is where Psalms is different. It actually does the opposite. So that's really interesting. So rather than preserving divine revelations received from God, the verses that make up the book of Psalms are hymns, songs of honor, and adoration, and they're designed to be offered to God. So Gregg, Braden says, in other words, the Psalms are prayers ready-made for situations that range from the general challenges of everyday life to specific prayers designed for in times of need. So I thought that was really interesting. I didn't know that. So, and then Gregg says, Psalm 91 is also known on occasion as the prayer of Moses, the prayer of protection, and the soldier's prayer. and it is one of the most powerful examples of what I mean here. So I think what Gregg means is what he means in his whole thesis of his book about how ancient words can be used to rewire our brains and have that connection with the universe, with God. There's this idea in spiritual community that words have power, that our ancestors have put power and intention in certain words and in sentences, that when we say them we can tap into that power and to use that. So the most powerful thing we can do is prayer, because it's just that direct communication with God. And some people say that prayer is like just another form of magic, if you think of it in that esoteric sort of concept, because when we say words, it's like we're casting spells. I mean, you can think of it like that, but you don't really have to. And how certain words in the English language have been specifically chosen to mean, like, there's like double meanings. Like when you think about it, spelling, when you spell a word, and spell means magic as well. And when you put words into a sentence, then sentence can also mean that you're making something happen. Like when a judge gives a sentence. So when you think about English, how they put it together in a very meaningful manner to have this double meaning. Okay, so I'm just going to read a couple of more paragraphs from this particular chapter. So Gregg then talks about how the ancient Hebrew Zohar, so I don't know what that is, so I'm just going to look that up. Oh wait, I don't need to look it up because Gregg explains it in the next sentence. Okay, so the ancient Hebrew Zohar, which is the foundational text of the mystical Kabbalah, describes how Psalm 91 protected the prophet Moses the second time he climbed to the top of Mount Sinai, which is when he received the 10 commandments. The Zohar describes how Moses was enveloped during his ascent by a mysterious cloud of unknown substance of unknown origin. The cloud became so dense that he could no longer see ahead of him, nor could he be seen by those watching him from below the cloud. Moses did not know what was happening, what the cloud meant, or what to expect. He didn't know if he'd ever reunite with his family, friends, and his followers again. So it was during this time of uncertainty and fear that Moses composed and recited Psalm 91 for his protection. So for reasons that he attributed to the power of this prayer, Moses in fact was protected. He continued to climb until he reached the top of Mount Sinai, where he received the stone tablets inscribed with instructions that have been the primary law for followers of the Abrahamic faiths for the last 3,000 plus years. So that is amazing. So Gregg then talks how, although Moses' original prayer in its entirety consists of 16 verses, it's often abbreviated to the first 2 verses which follow for ease of use and when time is of the essence. So if you want to, you can look up the entire psalm. I have actually, and it's really beautifully written. I've actually, last night I wrote it all out in my notebook, and it's something I want to read every day for protection, and I think it's just something really lovely to do. So you can read the whole psalm, and or you can just have the first 2 verses and just say that. If you're outside and all of a sudden you feel a sense of dread or something, you can just recite it. So you can have it on your phone or just on a piece of paper and just carry it around with you. So the first 2 verses. So, he that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress. My God, in Him will I trust. So, and then Gregg says that when you have a closer look at this prayer, it reveals that the source of the protection it provides comes from the deeper layers of meaning that may be known by those who understand the code. So I just love that. I just love it when when he talks about stuff like that, like code and stuff like that. It's just really, I don't know, it's really interesting. So then Gregg talks about the coded name of God, and he takes each name of God that's mentioned in the verse and he breaks it down, and it's just so brilliant that I just have to talk about it. I'll paraphrase what he's saying just so I'm not reading it verbatim. Okay, so Gregg then talks about the coded names of God. So he also mentions that there are actually entire books that have been dedicated to discuss and reveal the mystery of Moses' prayer of protection. So that's pretty amazing that people have written actual full books about it. And then Gregg, in his book, he says that the following discussion, he's going to just focus on the coded names for God that are found throughout the prayer and the protection that they provide us. And so the first name of God that he wants to discuss is Most High. So coded name 1, Most High. So the first encoded name of God is Most High. In biblical Hebrew, this is typically translated from Aramaic, which is the original language of the scriptures, as El Elyon. Please forgive me if I'm not pronouncing these words properly, because I don't know Hebrew, and these are like first time I'm coming across I've heard some of the words before, but so yeah, please forgive me if I'm saying it wrong. So the first encoded name of God is Most High. In biblical Hebrew, this is typically translated from Aramaic, which is the original language of the scriptures, as El Elyon. So that's Elyon. And this means God Most High, or God the Highest, indicating that nothing can be greater or more powerful than the essence of the force represented in this name. So this application of this word code is seen early in the Old Testament and in the book of Genesis. So blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand. So the first coded name in the prayer is Most High. And then Gregg talks about, so the next coded name that Gregg discussed in the prayer is God's name, Almighty. The second of God's hidden names is the word Almighty, and is typically translated by Near Eastern scholars from Aramaic as Shaddai. I think it says Shaddai. Again, apologies. Please forgive me, God, for not pronouncing it correctly. So, Almighty, translated from Aramaic as Shaddai. I think that's how you pronounce it, meaning Almighty, or El Shaddai, meaning God Almighty. This is one of the 7 names of God that are substituted for God's actual name over 6,800 times in the Hebrew Bible. The other 6 names are I think that's how you pronounce it. Ehyeh. I'm so sorry, I'm not saying these words properly. Meaning I will be. Oh no, these words are really hard. I can't even pronounce that. But there's another one meaning host. Elohim, meaning gods. El, meaning God. And Eloah, also meaning God. So I am so sorry. I'm totally saying those names wrong. My apologies. Okay, so then the third coded name is Lord. The third coded name is perhaps the most direct, mysterious, and powerful. It is the personal name of God, Yahweh. I actually have heard about this, that the Jewish people have so much respect for the personal name of God that they don't actually say it and they don't write it down, but instead they say Adonai, which means Lord. And so they don't, I think that, so I'm sorry if I'm not saying that right, but that is what I have heard, I've come across. Okay. Following the initial revelation of his identity to Moses on Mount Sinai as I am. So I think Prophet Moses asked God's name or something like that, and then God said, I am. And I think I remember first coming across that concept in Dr. Wayne Dyer's video, and he said, I am that I am. That's what God said, that God is that he is. Okay, so and then Prophet Moses asked for a clarification as to how he should address God when in his presence. And the reply was the one-time revelation of God's personal name to the people of the earth. In Exodus, God stated to Moses in no uncertain terms, I am Yahweh. That's just giving me goosebumps. I think that's so beautiful and so amazing. So in the earliest records of the Hebrew Bible, before the writing of the authoritative 6th century Masoretic text, God's personal name is clearly identified as Yahweh. Because Orthodox Jewish tradition holds this name so sacred, however, it is never to be written or spoken as a common word. For these reasons, God's personal name has been replaced approximately 6,800 times in the Hebrew Bible with alternative names such as Adonai, Elohim, and Lord. I think that is so beautiful. I think that is just so amazing that, the Jewish people have so much respect and honor for God's personal name, and that it's so sacred that they replaced it with alternate names like Adonai, which means my Lord. So I think that's really, really beautiful. Okay, so the next coded name in the prayer is God, the actual word God. So Gregg then discusses the last coded name in the prayer, God. So the fourth coded name, God, is translated from the Hebrew Elohim and is the most common name used for God in the Old Testament. While there continues to be uncertainty and mystery as to the precise translation of this word, it is typically associated with God the Creator. So God the Creator. The first insights into the nature of this mysterious word are found in Genesis 1:1, which is so amazing because that is what I was reading this morning. I mean, that's serendipity right there. I just love it when serendipity things happen. Okay, so where the first sentence states, oh my God, didn't I just say that for a sentence in the podcast? Isn't that amazing? Like I have not read this chapter. I'm literally reading it with you right now. That's a sign from God right there. I mean, that's serendipity right there. Okay. So, the book of Genesis, which is the first book of the Old Testament and the first book of the Bible. And the first sentence of the book of Genesis, so the first sentence of the entire Bible is, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. In this reference, God is referred to in the singular as the creator. Later in Genesis 1:27, so in Genesis book 1, verse 27, I think think that's how you reference it. However, we are given a deeper sense of the power of this creation. Genesis book 1:27 begins, "So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him." So indicating that humankind is a reflection of a singular essence. Yet, in the second part of the same sentence, the description of this primal act of creation expands. Male and female created he them. A reference that is dual rather than singular. In this way, we are shown the all-inclusive power of the Creator as both singular and plural. I don't really understand that, but maybe I will coming to it again. But yeah, so that's really, really nice how Gregg broke down every single word of God in the prayer. So I really like how he did that. So he explains, the reason behind the power of the prayer and why it works. Okay, so the Psalm 91 is also called the Soldier's Prayer, and so he then says, in addition to offering a source of personal protection since the time of its origin, Psalms 91 has also been used as a prayer of protection by entire armies as they prepare themselves for battle. During World War I, for example, it was common for military units to be given the assignment of memorizing the soldier's prayer the night before battle. In doing so, Moses' prayer of protection occupied their hearts and minds, preparing them for the hand-to-hand combat that they were about to face on the battlefields of Europe. And as Gregg mentioned before, while the first two verses are often recited as a brief prayer of the protection, the entire prayer can be and often is used as well. And then he has the whole prayer. I'm not going to read it out to you because it is very long, but if you are interested in reading it, just go look for it. So it's Psalm 91. And yeah, so I really like it. I really love it. So I wrote it all down and put it in my book. So I'm going to be saying it, hopefully, God willing, every day for protection. So then Gregg finishes this chapter and telling you how to use this wisdom code. So the power of wisdom codes comes from the repetition and doing so in the affirmative. So you repeat it and then you feel it in your heart. These are my words that I'm trying to understand what Gregg's saying. So then Gregg says, this imprints a code on the subconscious mind. So that's what you want to do. You want to imprint this code onto the subconscious mind. When we create heart-brain harmony, we open a communication directly with the subconscious mind. So from a place of heart-brain harmony, recite this code line by line. You can either say it silently in your mind or out loud until you feel an increased sense of trust and certainty that you are not alone. The key is to embrace this code with a focus of awareness, breath, and feeling in the heart rather than the mind. So when you say it, you want to feel it in your heart center, and as they say, in your heart chakra. So it's not just a mind thing, it's a heart thing. So you really want to feel it that, God is going to protect you. So I've read somewhere that the best prayer is the prayer where you feel it's already been answered and it will be answered by God. So when you say the verse, you really want to feel it in your heart. So I'm just going to say it one more time to finish this podcast. So I would like to invite you to place your hand over your heart if you can, and just really feel the words in your heart. Okay, let's begin. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress. My God, In him will I trust. Amen. And my friend actually told me the meaning of Amen. I've been saying it all my life. It actually means, and so be it, and so it shall be, or something like that, and so be it. So that's why prayers always ended with Amen. And you can put your hands together in a prayer mode when you say the prayer. I actually learned the significance of putting your hands together in this prayer position. It's because it's a connection between your conscious brain and your subconscious brain, your right and your left brain, or something like that. But I think it signifies your connection between your conscious brain and your subconscious brain. So I always remember that when I do the prayer position, when I say a prayer. So I hope you enjoyed that podcast. So I'm going to hopefully record more podcasts like this, discussing books and things that I come across, lots of random things. So, okay, I'm going to end this podcast right now, and I'm wishing you a very happy day or evening whenever you listen to this. Okay, thank you for listening. Bye for now. Actually, before I end this podcast, you thought it was over, but it's not. I just want to read the introduction of Gregg Brandon. I keep wanting to say Brandon, but it's Braden. I don't even know if I'm saying his surname correctly. But just to give you a background on his book, The Wisdom Codes. So, also before I get into that, I just had like an epiphany yesterday, and I realized that, all these different religions, people trying to find, or, different religions, different spiritual practices, they're all just different ways of connecting with God. And, you could read something like a religious book and, be inspired to it. And then I was thinking, it doesn't really matter what you believe. What matters is what you do. It's like, someone can, and a person that's evil, they can read a religious book and take, I don't know, just be like, use it as a reason to do evil. But another person that's good, they could read the same text and, not do evil, but be inspired to do good. So I think it's not the actual ideas, religious ideas or beliefs, or spiritual ideas. It's what is the intention that we have, what we get out of it. I mean, I don't know if I'm explaining that correctly. I think it's about who we are and what we do with that information. So absolutely, what you believe shapes your thoughts, shapes your feelings, and then it shapes your actions. So it is really, really important to be guarded and to make sure what you believe is, ethical, of the moral code, that it doesn't hurt other human beings, it doesn't encroach on their sovereignty, or in violence or anything like that. And that it inspires you to do, good things in whatever aspect that is for you, like however you want to be of service in the way you want to be of service, which comes back to Abraham Hicks' teachings, is like, the way you want to be of service to the world and to humanity is in the way that gives you joy. So, there are like artists and, painters, writers, doctors, scientists, all these, people that want to be of service, but they want to do it in a way that gives them joy. And that's a really nice philosophical way of living your life. So, yeah, I just wanted to add that little bit of addendum. I don't know, just making up words. Okay, so let's get back to the book. So it's The Wisdom Codes, Ancient Words to Rewire Our Brains and Heal Our Hearts, written by Gregg Brandon. Oh, it's actually published in 2020. Wow, so this is a really new book. So it's published by Hay House, which is a great esoteric publishing, spiritual publishing house. Okay, so the first page, first couple of pages, is that one may use this in fair use as brief quotations embodied in articles and reviews, which I am doing. I'm using the fair use ability to discuss this book. Okay, because I just really love the concept. Okay, so I just want to give a little, just want to discuss how he introduces the book. So I'm not going to read it verbatim. I'm just going to paraphrase what he says. So I'm just going to read it in my head first and then paraphrase what he said. So the first paragraph of his preface, he talks about how universally, all throughout ages, through history, we have used words to comfort ourselves in times of need. And so he gives an example from the Blessing Way prayer used by the Navajo of the American desert Southwest to honor natural order in times of chaos, to the Old Testament priestly blessing discovered on 2 tiny silver scrolls dating to nearly 3,000 years ago. And that's amazing. So the world history is filled with examples of words that have soothed us, comforted us, and protected us. And so not only individually, but also collectively, either formally or informally, out loud or under our breaths. Throughout human history, we humans have used special words to help us navigate the difficult moments of life. So what he's discussing here is the power of words. Words have so much power. Like, people don't realize words have power, and there's something in there. It's like there's magic in words, and they have the power to uplift you, to comfort you when you're feeling down and when you're feeling depressed, but they can also hurt you like a knife, like a physical knife. Like a friend of mine messaged me yesterday, and she was really upset because a friend of hers sent her a message, and it was just words, but it really upset her because words have power. So what we say to people, we have to be really, really careful, because once we say the words, they're out there, and bridges can be burnt, and sometimes you can't come back from it. And so we have to be really careful of the words we say and what we say to people, whether verbally or whether written down, especially over text messages, because I think that's probably the least effective mode of communication, because it's like once you put it out there, it's out there and you can't take it back. And so we have to be really careful of the words we use. Okay, so the next part. So I'm just going to read it in my head and then paraphrase it, because I'm using the fair use copyright law, so I can use the fair use. What's that word? I don't know. So in the next paragraph, he talks about how when we create, it's an expression of the ideas that are within our heads. So through art, through film, music, writing. So before something exists, it has to first exist in the brain, in the head, in our minds, and then we can, and then it goes into a physical form. And how, in that respect, the words from ancient times, they have preserved this from our ancestors. So they're living examples of this timeless communication of us with the world. So it's a relationship between our inner and outer worlds, which leads us to view our inspiration as consciousness informing itself, reminding us of our untapped possibilities and potential. And then, okay. So the aim of the book, in writing the wisdom codes, his aim was to collect trusted words that throughout history people have turned to in times of need. And so what he's done is he's broken them down, distilled them into easy to read, quick access, sort of like a modern day manual. So he's what he's done, he's compiled it into revered prayers, mantras, chants, hymns, designed to provide reassurance, protection, and healing when life brings danger, hurt, unspeakable loss, and self-doubt. In such times, even the most well-meaning support of family and friends often isn't, it falls short. And then, we find ourselves in the dark void of our emotional abyss. So that's actually really true. Sometimes, like in my past, like I've been in this dark void, and nothing anyone says can make me feel better. What I do instead is I turn to quotes. And I have this app called Motivation, and it's a collection of quotes from all sorts of different categories, writers from ancient texts, from different religions and different leaders, and it's just a whole bunch of different, and then you can categorize which category you want, and sometimes that's the only thing that will give me comfort in those times of heartache, whatever I'm going through. And I will just read the words, and it will give me so much comfort. And it's so amazing, the power of a quote that can really heal you, because I think what we really want is just understanding, and we want empathy. We don't want sympathy, we want empathy. We want someone to feel what we are feeling and going through, and saying, I hear you, I've been there, and you're going to be okay. It's like what Brené Brown talks about. If you don't know Brené Brown, she is amazing. She talks about how the power of empathy. It's like if somebody is in a dark well, you don't necessarily jump down with them, because if you do that, then you're not going to be able to take them out. What you do is you stand by the edge of the well, and you talk to them down there, and that you say to them, I hear you, I'm with you. And then you can give them light, you can give them a ladder so that they themselves climb out of that hole, of that darkness, because they have to do it themselves, because that's where the power is. You can't do it for them. You can't save people. They have to save themselves, because then they can show themselves that they do actually have the power and the strength, and it helps them with their self-esteem. So sympathy is like, oh, there, I feel sorry for you, sort of pitying, which isn't empowering for the person. I mean, sympathy, don't get me wrong, it's nice. Of course, we all want it, because it's a form of loving. But if you only give sympathy, then you're not empowering the person. So you can give a combination of sympathy and empathy. Okay, so back to the book. So Gregg then talks about how, in such dire times, we might just have ourselves and nobody else. So in such times, all we may have is ourselves. And ultimately, so what Gregg is saying, that is all we actually need. So once he understood this simple truth, it made perfect sense that we already have the power to rewire our brains on demand, and in doing so, to choose to self-regulate the way to respond to life's extremes. So he's actually talking about how we really have the power within us already to rewire our brains, and to take us out of the void, of the black dark void of our emotional abyss. So if you already have the tools in your armor as such, you can then sort of be prepared, and and know what to do. And it's sort of like training. So why do we train for things? So that when we come across an incident, we know what to do. That's why we practice, so that when the time comes, we know exactly what to do, or what to say, or to get us out of that spiraling out of control feeling. But it's okay to feel those feelings. One shouldn't, suppress it and, go straight away to like, get us out of it. It's okay to sit with those, dark feelings. But then once you like, okay, I want to get myself out of it, then you know that you have tools, you have all these prayer codes, wisdom codes in your arsenal belt to then use to get yourself in a better feeling place. So that's what he's. I think that's the thesis of this book, the main aim of this book. So I really like that. So it's like giving us tools as such on how to self-regulate when we have, situations of extremes. So then Gregg talks about how when we consciously apply the word codes of the past to challenges that we face in the moment, he's saying that we benefit from the wisdom of ancient sages, healers, mystics, and prophets. In doing so, we're then no longer victims, but we feel empowered. And so then Gregg says, we're no longer defined by our circumstances, but become masters of our destiny. And I think that's so I really like what he said. So when we have these wisdom codes with us, we are then no longer defined by our circumstances, but become masters of our destiny. So it also reminds me of what Dr. Wayne Dyer says, that, how you see life is how, I'm probably butchering it, but he talks about how you can reframe your mind according to the situation to try to make it better. It's the outlook, the way you think about it. Okay. And so then Gregg talks about how this is the actual power of the wisdom codes. It's in their presence, we are changed. When we speak the words either out loud or silently to ourselves, Gregg says that something actually shifts within us. And that something is where the power of words, chemistry, and neurons converge in a beautiful way. So he then says, we associate the words of the codes with the meaning we give to the words. So you're associating the words of the codes with the meaning that we actually give to the words. And this association directly directs our brain cells, which is called neurons. So neurons are brain cells. So then they will connect in a precise way that harmonizes our biology with the energy of our emotions. So we do have the power to affect our biological state. And Gregg does talk about that in the Divine Matrix YouTube video that I mentioned earlier on. I highly recommend it, and how we can actually affect our DNA. And if you know about Dr. Bruce Lipton, he talks about epigenetics, which is the expression of genes. So that's another person I can recommend that you can look up on YouTube. Okay, so Gregg then says, chemically, we are no longer the same person we were only moments or hours ago. That is amazing. So he's saying that we have the ability to rewire our brain cells through words and giving power, giving meaning to these words. And in doing so, we actually are no longer the same person we were before we've said that word. So chemically, we're no longer the same person. That's incredible. So that just shows you how much power we actually have, and that we can tap into, that we can rewire our thoughts and our brains and how we think and our health and our body, because it all comes down to the first thing, which is thought. Thought creates feeling, and then from feeling then you have behavior, and then that's something I do want to discuss in a future podcast. Dr. Wayne Dyer talks about that, the concept of feeling and thoughts. So I love that. I think it's so empowering and inspiring. So then Gregg says, and it's that difference that opens the door to new ways of thinking, feeling, and acting when it comes to our losses, fears, and betrayals. So it's the way we think about things that we can change. And then I think that's really, really healing. And Gregg says, while our changes may be subtle and perhaps will go unnoticed by those people in our lives, but it's these changes, it's precisely these changes that gives us the wisdom. That's what we want. We want wisdom, confidence, and power to awaken a deeper power within ourselves. That's amazing. That's incredible. I mean, isn't that what they say? Wisdom, with wisdom comes confidence, and with confidence comes power. So I'm just going to say that again because that was really incredible. So it gives us wisdom, confidence, and the power to awaken a deeper power within ourselves. Incredible. Amazing. Really, really amazing. I've only read like a few pages from this book and I already love it. And I feel like I'm really going to enjoy reading this. So I'm just going to, and then the next bit is introduction. So I'm not going to read any more from it. I might do in a future podcast. So I'm just going to leave it right there. And yep, that's the end of this podcast. Thank you for listening. Bye for now.